Hello everybody, welcome to today's video. It's another in the series on Othello. Everything I go through in this video series comes from Mr. Bruff's Guide to Othello. Written by Lindsay Dyer, edited by me, it contains the complete original text, a line-by-line translation into modern English, and detailed analysis. Pick up a copy in paperback, ebook or Kindle form following the links in the description. So today I want to talk about structure. Now, Othello is often recognised as being the best constructed of all Shakespearean tragedies, partly because the action begins almost immediately and there's hardly any digression from the main plot. From the moment the play opens up to the point of Othello's suicide, only a few days pass, and the short time of such an action-packed plot was a deliberate source of engagement. Although action-packed, the structure of the plot is simple enough to avoid any confusion, and Shakespeare chose to use a three-part structure true to the Aristotelian model referred to in his work on dramatic theory, Poetics. Aristotle states that a play should contain a single whole action. A whole is what has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So if we look at that as a model then, the beginning, the middle and the end, well, we have the beginning, of course, with the marriage of Othello and Desdemona, the middle is Iago's deception, and the end, spoiler alert, is the murder of Desdemona and the discovery of Iago's lies. Now, within this three-part structure, then there are three main ingredients: the hamartia, the tragic flaw, a tragic flaw in our tragic hero's character that will bring about his downfall. The catharsis, that's the purgation of emotions so the audience feel they have learned something. And the anagnorisis, the character's revelation of something that hasn't been realized previously. Othello, as protagonist, fulfills Aristotle's requirement for a tragic hero. He begins the play as a man of noble status who falls from his position of power because of his hamartia. The catharsis and anagnorisis come when Othello realizes the truth about Iago and Desdemona. So within this three-part structure, Shakespeare then uses the five recognized structural divisions of a dramatic work, according to classic critical theory. We have the five-act analysis with our exposition, which is our introduction of main characters and the meaning of the story. So Othello's appearance is delayed, but he's mentioned repeatedly. In Act 1, Iago is deliberately introduced first to allow him to manipulate the audience into believing his description of Othello as a barbarous, revolting, threatening man, thus heightening the anticipation of Othello's arrival on stage. Rodrigo and Iago start the play by informing Brabantio of his daughter's elopement. In Act 2, Brabantio complains to the Duke of Venice. Othello delivers his defence. Brabantio withdraws complaint. In Act 3, Othello, Desdemona, Iago, Emilia, Cassio and Rodrigo go to Venice because of a battle with the Turks, a battle that sort of nothing actually happens in. In Act 4, which we can see as the rising action, there are advancements in action occurring, difficulties increasing. Iago makes Othello question Desdemona's faithfulness. Iago steals the handkerchief and gives it to Cassio. Othello sees Cassio with it. Othello becomes jealous. Act 5, our climax, the most intense part of the play. The crisis happens late in the play to preserve the excitement until the end, to keep the audience interested. Othello, of course, kills Desdemona. Emilia realizes what's happened and reveals all. Iago kills Emilia. Othello realizes the truth, tries to kill Iago. Lodovico disarms Othello, and Iago escapes. In the falling action, the characters resolve the conflict through confessing and then by dying. Othello accepts his mistake, finds a dagger, and begs to be remembered honourably. And then finally, the denouement, the conclusion of the story's tragic structure. Othello kills himself. Iago is captured. The play ends with Desdemona, Othello, and Emilia dead on the bed. Other things we can think about with structure, the fact that it's got a mixture of blank verse and prose. Blank verse is unrhymed poetry written in iambic pentameter, consisting of 5 feet of 2 syllables each, an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable, You can think of the sort of ti-dum, 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 ti-dum rhythm, and you can see an example there on the screen. Then we see the prose that is used in other parts of the text. And what we need to ask ourselves is, well, why does this kind of thing matter? In Shakespeare's time, verse was considered to be of higher status and moral worth than prose, so carried greater significance. Prose was for everyday speech, whereas verse was more formal and usually spoken by noble characters. So, if a passage or character is of no particular importance, you may find that the text is written in prose. If a passage or character is important, you may find the text is written in rhythmic verse. So, to recap, verse really equals nobility and prose equals commoner. Interestingly, though, Iago comfortably switches between insincere blank verse and prose. He seems to adopt a manner which suits his purposes and actually chooses to use prose when manipulating others. Most of the prose spoken in Othello is instigated by Iago, and it is this that contrasts with the blank verse. This can be seen when comparing Iago trying to convince Rodrigo not to kill himself in Act 1, when he says, "Thou art sure of me, go make money, I have often told thee, and I retell thee again, I hate the more, my cause is hearted," to Iago's seamless transition into verse when speaking to the audience to reveal his devious plans. So in Othello, a number of scenes have a mixture of blank verse and prose, and it's very, very clever when we see that. How do scenes end? Often with iambic rhyming couplets. The first 4 acts end in rhyming couplets delivered by Iago as a way of creating suspense and excitement for his plan. The final rhyming couplet of the play offers a moral comment on the action and ties the events up, as well as ensures the message will be memorable. It says, "Myself was straight aboard, and to the state this heavy act with heavy heart relate." Let's finish then thinking about soliloquies. A soliloquy is the act of expressing inner thoughts alone on stage, and Shakespeare used soliloquies to allow the characters to express their solitary thoughts verbally in order to give the audience an insight into the character's mind. In Othello, we're able to learn the true thoughts of a character, secret plans, conspiracies, free from the influence of anybody else. And it's through soliloquies that we learn Iago's true manipulative thoughts as early as Act 1, Scene 3. And it's through Othello's final soliloquy in Act 5, Scene 2, that we learn that Othello has regained control. He reprises his dignity, restores his status as a tragic hero by accepting his fate. Iago has roughly 4 times as many soliloquies in the play in comparison to Othello, which suggests a contrast in their nature, as Iago appears to be full of internal conflict, whereas Othello appears to be honest and free from any internal conflict. There are lots of soliloquies to analyze. They're analyzed in the book, so make sure you pick up a copy. And if you found this video useful, please do give it a thumbs up.